Today we continue in our series, Christmas in July, 'Tis the Season. And we're going through the book of Ecclesiastes this month. And today's message is taken from Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verses 7 through 12, as we talk about a season for reflection. Story is told about while walking down the street one day, a U.S. senator was tragically hit by a truck and dies. He ends up going up to heaven and he meets St. Peter at the entrance. "Welcome to heaven," says St. Peter. "Before you settle in, it seems there's a problem here. We seldom see a high official around this place. You see, so we're not sure what to do with you." "No problem, just let me in," says the senator. "Well, I'd like to, but I have orders from higher up. What we'll do is have you spend one day in hell and one day in heaven, and then let you pick where you want to go." "Really? I've made up my mind. I want to stay in heaven." "I'm sorry, but we have our rules," says St. Peter. So with that, St. Peter escorts him to the elevator, and they get in, and he goes down, down, down to hell. The door opens, and he finds himself in the middle of a green golf course. In the distance is a clubhouse, and standing in front of it are all of his friends and other politicians who have worked with him. Everyone's very happy and in evening dress. They run to get him, shake his hand, and reminisce about the good old days that they used to have, getting rich at the expense of other people. They play a friendly game of golf, and then dine on lobster, caviar, and champagne. Also present is the devil himself. Really, and he really is a friendly guy who has a good time dancing and telling jokes. They're having such a good time that before he realizes it, it's time to leave. Everyone gives him a hearty farewell and waves while the elevator door opens. He gets in, and the elevator goes up, 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 up. And the doors open in heaven where St. Peter's waiting for him. Now it's time to visit heaven. So 24 hours pass with the senator joining a group of contented souls, moving from cloud to cloud, playing harps and singing praises to God. They have a good time, and before he realizes it, 24 hours has gone by, and St. Peter returns. "Well then, you've spent a day in hell and a day in heaven. What's your choice for eternity?" Well, the senator reflects for a moment. Then he answers, "Well, I would never have said this before, but I had such a wonderful time in hell, I think I want to go there." Well, St. Peter escorts him to the elevator, and he goes down to hell. Now when the doors open, he sees nothing but wasteland. He sees barren land covered with garbage and filth. He sees all of his friends dressed in rags, picking up garbage and being beaten by demons. The devil comes over to him and puts his arm around his shoulder. "I don't understand," stammers the senator. "Yesterday I was here, and there was a golf course and a clubhouse, and we ate lobster and caviar and champagne and danced and had such a good time. Now there's just a wasteland full of garbage and filth, and my friends look miserable. What happened?" The devil looks at him with his arm around his shoulder, and he said, "Yesterday we were campaigning. Today you voted." Reflection. Sometimes in our lives there are mountains to climb. Sometimes there are adventures to seek. Other times there is a time for us to just quietly sit back and reflect. Have you taken time in your life to reflect? Have you looked back in your life and asked yourself, Have I done well? Have I made mistakes? Have I made up for those wrongs that I have said or done? It's at this point that in Solomon's life that he feels that it's time for reflection when he writes Ecclesiastes chapter 9. As Solomon looks back on his life and tells us what he's learned, I want us to draw from his conclusions and see what he's trying to teach us. The first thing that I want us to look at this morning is this. Season of reflection is, number one, this is your one and only life. Enjoy it. Now, that sounds kind of hedonistic. You may think, oh, enjoy it. The preacher says I can go do whatever I want to do. I can enjoy life. I can do all those things that my parents told me never to do, that other preachers told me to stay away from. No, that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about enjoying life that God has given you to enjoy in a way that He wants you to enjoy it. A hard-driving corporate attorney saw a fisherman that he knew from church one afternoon with his legs dangling off a pier, and he was helping his two young sons catch crabs. Why aren't you out there fishing? The attorney asked. Because I've caught enough fish for today, the man answered. Why don't you catch more fish than you need? What good would that do? The fisherman said. The lawyer said, well, you could earn money by selling them, and you could buy a better boat, and you could catch more fish so that you could buy more boats and have a fleet, and you could become rich like me. Fisherman says, what would I do then? The lawyer says, you could sit down and enjoy life. He says, what do you think I'm doing now? Sometimes we don't realize that what's going on right now in our lives are the things that we should be enjoying. That moment with family. I know Christmas time seems to be such a crazy, hectic time, and we're talking about Christmas in July, but we get so busy and caught up in getting all the right gifts and decorating and cooking the meal and cleaning the house and putting up the lights and just making sure everything's perfect, that by the time it's all said and done, it's over and we've missed it. There are things, folks, right in front of our eyes that we should be enjoying in life. God has blessed us with so much. Look around you. Look at your spouse. Look at your kids, your grandkids. Look at your parents, your grandparents if you still have them. Look at the outside. Look at that beautiful day. Now, I don't want to hear anybody complaining in January about how cold it is if you're complaining about how hot it is in July. Enjoy what you've got in the moment. Embrace every moment. Ecclesiastes 9:7-9 says, go eat your bread with joy and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already approved what you do. Let your garments be always white. Let not oil be lacking on your head. Enjoy life with the wife whom you love all the days of your vain life that He has given you under the sun, because that is your portion in life and in your toil at which you toil under the sun. There's a lot of things in this life that God's given us that we take advantage of. You agree with me? Then why do we always want more when we're not enjoying what we already have? Why do we want better when we don't appreciate what we already have received? You know, one of the jokes that Jeff Ecker and I talk about, we go out to eat quite a bit. And on the weekends, Kevin always goes with us, and sometimes my kids and Lisa will go. And he always jokes about Kevin. We're just sitting there eating on Friday night, and he's wondering where are we going to go Saturday night to eat, right, Kevin? He's already thinking 24 hours ahead. He's thinking for the next big meal. And that's how we go through life a lot of times. We don't enjoy what we have right there on our plate, what we have in front of us. We're thinking about what's next, what's coming up, rather than what we've got in the here and now. You know, everybody always thinks the grass is greener on the other side. Well, you know what? The people on that side of the fence thinks it's greener over where we're at. We need to be satisfied and enjoy what we've got. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't work hard and try to better ourselves, but what I'm saying is, in the process of doing that, don't lose focus. Don't lose sight of the life you have and the joy that you have. Now, every life has its problems. Every life has those things that we wish that weren't there, that we could change. But you know, it could always be worse. And we need to look at the good that we have rather than focusing on the negatives and on the bad. I just want to encourage you in that. If you don't get anything else out of this message today, I hope you get that. God has blessed you with what you've got. Enjoy it. Enjoy it to the fullest. He loved you enough to give it to you. Don't slap him in the face by rejecting it or ignoring it or griping about it. Solomon lists food and drink and life as three of the things that God has blessed us with. He then encourages us to enjoy them because we do not know when they will end. Everyone in this room has lost someone or something in their life. And we look back and we say, oh, I wish I could have another day. I wish I could have another meal, another moment, another day sitting with them in church. We need to enjoy who we have, what we have right now, because we never know when it can end. Secondly, Solomon tells us life is short. Give it your all. A toothpaste factory had a problem. They sometimes shipped empty boxes without the tube inside. This was due to the way the production line was set up, and people with experience in designing production lines will tell you how difficult it is to have everything happen with timing and precision, that every single unit coming out of it is perfect 100% of the time. Small variations in the environment can cause changes to happen. Some may mean that you must have quality assurance checks smartly distributed across the line so that customers all the way down to the supermarket don't get angry and buy another product instead. Understanding how important that was, a CEO of a toothpaste factory got the top people in the company together, and they decided to start a new project in which they would hire an external engineering company to solve their empty box problem, as their engineering department was already busy working on other things. The project followed the usual process: budget and project sponsors, allocations, third party selected, a 6-month projected time for solution. Well, they solved the problem by using high-tech precision scales that would sound a bell and flash lights whenever a toothpaste box would weigh less than it should. The line would stop, and someone had to walk over and yank the defective box out of it, pressing another button, and when done, to restart the line. A while later, the CEO decided to have a look at this project and its amazing results. No empty boxes were shipped out of the factory after the scales were put in place. Very few customer complaints, and they were gaining market shares. That's some money well spent, he thought. It turns out that a number of defects picked up by the scale was 0 after 3 weeks of production use. It shouldn't have been picking up it should be picking up at least a dozen a day. So maybe there was something wrong with the report. He filed a bug against it, and after some investigation, the engineers came back saying that the report was correct. The scales really weren't picking up any defects because all boxes that got to that point in the conveyor belt were good. Well, puzzled, the CEO travels down to the factory and walks up to the part of the line where the precision scales were installed. Now listen to this. A few feet before the scale, there was a $20 desk fan blowing the empty boxes out of the belt and into the bin. "Oh, that," says one of the workers. "One of the guys put it there because he was tired of walking over every time the bell rang." Whenever we do a job, it says in Ecclesiastes 9:10, "Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might. For there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol to which you are going." Here Solomon stresses the urgency in our work. Whatever we find to do, he says, it is our responsibility to do it with all of our might, to do our best at it no matter what. Now that's hard to do. Are there days that you just don't feel like going to work? Are there days that you just don't feel like doing that job around the house that the wife wants you to do? Larry's gone every day. Larry was telling me about his poor life before church started. We need to pray for Larry and pray for his wife. She's a slave driver. He was bemoaning the fact that she had him out cutting grass and then coming in and painting. And then he had to take out the garbage. And then what else, Larry? Forget it? And I am sure, with all of that inhumane activity going on in the Strickland home, that it was hard for him to do his best. No, I don't think it was. Because Larry loves his wife. And even though he jokes around about it, they've had 50 plus years together. And he does those jobs because he wants to, because he loves Linda. And he doesn't want to sleep on the couch. When we do anything in life, whether it be for someone like our spouse that we truly love, we should still do it with all our might. We should do our best at it. It says in Scripture that we're to do it as if we're doing it for who? The Lord, God. So that puts a little different spin on it, doesn't it? Look at it not as your mean boss is asking you to do it. Look at it as God is asking me to do this. And this is a way I can honor him, and a way that I can show him my love and my appreciation. Solomon says life will be a whole lot better if we do that. Solomon here tells us the urgency of our work. Whatever we find to do, it is our responsibility to do it with all of our might. As I said earlier, Paul encouraged the Christians at Colossae in Colossians 3:23 and 24, "Whatever you do, work with all your heart as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. Thirdly, in Ecclesiastes 9:11, Solomon lets us know that the race is long, stick with it. He says, "Again I saw that under the sun the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the intelligent, nor favor to those with knowledge, but time and chance happens to them all." Time and chance plays a part for everyone. Opportunities happen. Things happen that may get in our way. But we have the opportunity to run the race, and it's not a sprint. Look at it as a marathon. Now, I know Tammy runs, and you got to pace yourself, right? When you're going for that longer run, you can't just come out of the gate with gangbusters and do your best and hardest, because what's going to happen? You're going to fall over. You're going to wear out really fast. You've got to pace yourself. And you've got to trust when you're training. A lot of people have trainers, coaches that help them with this. And you got to listen, right? You got to do what they say. You may not like what they say. You may not understand what they're saying, but you've got to trust them and not yourself. I read this story this week about Earl Weaver, a former manager of the Baltimore Orioles. And he had a rule that no one could steal a base unless given the steal sign. Well, this upset one of his star players. Remember Reggie Jackson? Because he felt he knew the pitchers and the batters well enough that he could judge whether he could steal or not. So one game he decided to steal without a sign. He got a good jump off the pitcher and easily beat the throw to second base. And as he shook off the dust of his uniform, Jackson smiled with delight, feeling he had vindicated his judgment to his manager. Later, Weaver took Jackson aside, and he explained why he hadn't given the steal sign. He said, "First, the next batter is Lee May, his best power hitter other than Jackson. When Jackson stole second, first base was left open, so the other team walked May intentionally, taking the bat out of his hands. Secondly, the following batter hadn't been strong against that pitcher, so Weaver felt he had to send up a pinch hitter to try to drive in the men on base, and that left Weaver without bench strength later in the game. The problem was that Jackson saw only his relationship to the pitcher and the catcher. Weaver was watching the whole game. We can learn from that. We too only see so far, but God sees the whole game. God sees the big picture. When he sends us a signal, it's wise to obey. So no matter what he says, or what we think we know, we need to realize God knows best. There's times in our lives that we want to try to take control and not listen to God. But we need to trust God. We need to trust him because he sees the big picture. Life is not a sprint. It's a marathon. And our job is to keep running. Keep running. Sometimes we will be on the receiving end of good things, and we may luck out like Reggie Jackson. But in the big picture, it may be more detrimental than helpful. Matthew 7:13 and 14 says, "Enter at the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few." Which gate are you looking for? Are you looking for the wide gate that everybody else is traveling in? Are you looking for the road that's easy? Are you looking for the narrow gate, the one that very few go on because the road is a little rougher and more narrow and it's hard? But it leads to life eternal. You know, ours is to keep running and to enter through the narrow gate. That's what Jesus said to do. And that's what we need to follow. And last, number 4, Solomon tells us in Ecclesiastes 9:12 that your hour will come, be ready for it. He says, for man does not know his time. Like fish that are taken in an evil net, and like birds that are caught in a snare, so the children of man are snared at the evil time when it suddenly falls upon them. Did you know that statistics show that 1 out of every person dies? Yeah. You're not going to get through this life alive, folks. I hate to be the bearer of such bad, depressing news. It may be today. It may be a year from now. It may be, who knows, for some of you that are young enough, 75, 80 years from now. Merle's granddaughter may be 100 years from now for her. But the point is, we're not getting out of this life alive. So we need to be ready for that day. Because none of us know when that day is going to come. None of us know when that's going to happen. I was eating at the Waterloo this week, and one of the waitresses there, Jean, many of you that go down there know little Jeannie. She's been there since, I think, the place opened. She's been there for over 50 years. And in talking with her, she told me, and I didn't know this, and I felt so bad about it because I didn't know. Jeannie's son, 48 years old, 2 or 3 months ago, just dropped dead from a heart attack. 48 years old. That's young. Even I look at that as young. The older I get, the higher the numbers look young. He's younger than me. And he was in good health, they thought. You never know, folks. Some of you are in a lot worse shape than he was. You're living on borrowed time. Not meaning to be disrespectful, just blatantly honest. You don't know what the future holds. Solomon says you need to be ready. Be ready. How's your commitment with the Lord? How's your relationship with the Lord? Are you serving Him like you should? Are you living the life that you should? Are you the same when you walk out these doors through the week as you are when you're in this building? Are your thoughts the same? Are your actions the same? Are your words the same? Is your attitude the same? It should be. Because your hour will come. So we need to be ready. Hebrews 9:27 says, and just as it is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes the judgment. It's been said there's only 2 things you have to do in life. That's die and what? Pay taxes? No, you don't have to pay taxes. You can go to jail. You don't have to pay taxes. But you do have to face judgment. We're going to stand before God someday and answer. Are you ready for that day? Are you ready? Are you ready? The attack of Pearl Harbor took place on December 7th, 1941. It was a sunny Sunday morning, much like today. A minimal contingent of soldiers was on duty at the time. Most offices were closed on the base, and many servicemen were on leave for the weekend. New technology, including the new radar mounted on Open Point, were in place, manned and functioning at the time of the attack. The incoming Japanese attack plans were detected by the radar and reported, but were mistaken for an incoming group of American planes due from the mainland that morning. While on practice maneuvers outside of the harbor that morning, an American destroyer spotted a Japanese submarine attempting to sneak into the harbor, and the submarine was fired upon and immediately reported, but it was ignored. Despite these and many other warnings, Pearl Harbor faced great loss that day. The losses and ill preparedness came from one major cause: no one believed that it could really happen. People aren't ready because they don't think the Lord's coming back. They think they've got forever to live. But there's a greater destruction coming, folks, for people's lives than Pearl Harbor. We're talking eternity, eternal consequences. And if you care about those people in your life that don't know Jesus, we need to be helping them get prepared. I don't know when the Lord's coming back, but I got to live each day thinking it could be today. And I need to be prepared, and you need to be prepared, for our hour will come. As the worship team comes this morning, we see that after reflection, as we reflect on our lives, we reflect on things going on in our lives, there comes a time to act. Depending on the nature of your reflection, the action you take may look differently than someone else's. But one thing is true: no matter our reflections, our lives are meant to glorify Jesus Christ. Solomon knows that the race of life is very long and that there are all kinds of obstacles along the way. But learning from his wisdom in Ecclesiastes will allow us to stay the course, bring glory to God, and be able to hear him say, when our hour comes, "Well done, good and faithful servant."